Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Sober Bliss podcast with me, Gail from Sober Bliss, obviously. And today I'm really delighted because I'm speaking to the wonderful Celeste Yvonne. Welcome, Celeste. It's so good to have you here.
Thanks, Gail. I am so grateful to be here with you right now.
Yeah, we've got lots to talk about. I want to just introduce you briefly. If people, they've not seen you before, they don't know who you are. I You're a writer, aren't you? Big on parenting, and you've got a book coming out about the mummy wine culture, which is really important. And I think I first discovered you from, well, the lovely hoodie that you're wearing, your the Ultimate Mom Challenge. And you also founder of the Sober Mom Squad as well, aren't you?
I'm a founding host,
A
but
founding
I'm not the
host.
founder. Yes.
Okay. And you write on Substack. I get your Substacks every week.
Mm.
So thank you for sharing all your experiences with us. I do think it's so refreshing to read honesty, and you write from the heart. You're such a beautiful writer.
Thank
Have
you.
you always been a writer, Celeste?
No, I have
Oh.
not. I started writing. I've I've been a marketing and PR professional my entire adult career.
Mm,
But I first started writing for myself when I was pregnant with my second born son. I had just undergone a miscarriage, and my I was now pregnant with what's now my 7-year old. But
mm,
um, I I had so much to talk about and so much I wanted to say about being pregnant after loss.
yeah.
Um, but there's this rule we have in our society that you don't talk about pregnancy in the first 12 weeks. And so I felt like I couldn't really tell anybody all these things I was thinking and all these fears I had and these hopes and dreams. So I started writing about it in an anonymous blog
Mm,
and just using it as a way to kind of explore some of these bigger things I was feeling. And maybe I figured I'd find others who could relate or connect with through the
yeah.
process. And that's how my writing started. It started as an anonymous blog that eventually I wound up adding my pen name to the blog and started publishing for um, some of the bigger parenting uh, online websites,
Mm,
like Scary Mommy, Today Show, Parents. Um, there was so many. Her View from Home.
yeah.
I started guest writing for these sites, and then I started building my own blog and creating social media accounts to tie with them.
Mm,
And it was all parenting related. It was about mental load of motherhood. It was less about the blissful parts of parenting. Some parents write, there's some mothers in my writing groups who do that so well, but I have a knack for writing about the hard parts. And that's kind of the direction a lot of my writing goes, is like the parts that people seem less inclined to talk about and share. um, I felt a greater need to speak about these things that so many parents were afraid to talk about for fear of being called ungrateful or of being a bad mom.
mm,
I was like, no, I'm going to share about the hard parts because they're real and most of us feel them.
yeah.
And from there, I had a realization in my own life that I was drinking too much to deal with a lot of the stress and the struggles in my own parenting journey. And I secretly quit drinking. And I did it, without going to meetings, without telling anybody. It was very fear and shame based.
Mm.
It's a fear and shame based decision. And it wasn't until I was about a year sober that I shared my journey on my blog and in my social media. And the response was just unbelievably positive. So many people said they could relate or they were proud of me. It was the opposite reaction of what I thought I was going to have, which was people thinking I was less, or
Mm.
I was a bad mom, or, all these things, these intrusive thoughts that went on through my own head when I was telling people, yeah, I struggled to drink. I could not moderate my drinking, so I quit, and my life's better on the other side. It did not feel like this was something, nobody made me feel like it was something to be ashamed of. If anything, people wanted me to write and speak more about that.
Yeah.
So, I've been sober 5 years now, and most of my writing now is around my sobriety and being a sober mom, and not necessarily the great parts about being sober. There's still struggles and challenges that come with uh, being sober in an alcohol fueled world. And I talk a lot about that too. But my writing and my blogging, and you've probably seen it on my Substack too, is it evolves with me as my sober journey evolves and just as life evolves, and I get to share it with people in real time.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you do because, like you said, it just resonates. It resonates with me so much. And I think that honesty and that truth is so very much needed. For my own experience, I think I drank as a mum to cope and to
Yeah.
pretend that everything was okay and then I had it all together and that I could do it and I wasn't struggling, but I was struggling. I still struggle with being a mum, obviously. But I think the fact that we can talk about it with openness and honesty, and we're human beings at the end of the day, we're not robots.
Yeah.
It's just so refreshing, I think, to have somebody to share what you're sharing and to make us realize, or to help us realize, that actually we're not alone. There's nothing wrong with us if we
Yeah.
find bedtime boring or bath time just so awful, and homework struggles. Oh, I hate homework struggles. And they weren't helped with a glass of wine. They weren't at all. It just made everything worse, really, looking back on it now. Um, so, what was it like for you then, Celeste, in the beginning, that first year when you were managing parenting without alcohol?
Yeah. That was a really hard year for me. And
Mm.
um, it, I made it harder than it had to be
Mm-hmm.
by doing it alone.
Yeah.
If I could go back and do it all over again, I would do it a very different way. I would have sought connection and community, and I would have read more books about the topic to try to
Mm.
understand and to feel less lonely and like this is just a me problem. Um, but I can't go back and redo it. All I can do is take what I've learned from the experience and help others, who are just starting their journey now, maybe learn from some of my own mistakes. But that first year was very, fear and shame driven, lots of secrets, so afraid of people knowing what I was doing, as if this is a bad thing.
Yeah.
I'm so afraid of people finding out that I had a drinking problem
Mm.
because, again, it would make me feel like less of a person. And I was so afraid of people not only finding out that I was trying to quit, but what if I failed? Then people would know I tried to quit and I failed. There was all these underlying intrusive thoughts going on in my head, like, what if, instead of the very positive, direct thing that I was doing, which was I was doing something good for myself. I
Yeah.
was doing something good for my family. If I could go back and lean less on the what ifs and more on the what is, I'm
Mm.
not drinking today. And that is powerful. That is, it doesn't matter what happens tomorrow. It doesn't matter what happens a year from now. All I have control over is the fact that I'm not drinking today. And that is something to be very proud of and grateful for. And a lot of weight, I think, would have been lifted from me if I could have been more focused on what I'm doing right now on this journey and less on what will people around me think and what if I fail.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a big block, I think, isn't it? What we imagine people will think of us. Because I don't know, I don't understand why, but there's still a lot of stigma and shame around sobriety, even though you and I know, and all the other people who are on this journey, that it is actually the best, most loving, kindest thing we can do for ourselves and our family. It's the whole culture which I want to ask you about. The mummy needs wine culture. I fell for it. I thought that I needed to drink in order to cope with everything, and it was the only way. I don't think I was aware at the time that there are other things you can do if you're tired or stressed or
Mm-hmm.
you just need a break. Alcohol is promoted as the go-to, isn't it? It's the thing that will fix everything and
Yes.
make it all okay. And your book really digs into that, doesn't it? So would you
Yeah.
mind sharing your experience of the mummy needs wine culture and what we can perhaps do to step out of it a little bit?
Yes. So, when I think about mommy wine culture, I think about the messaging that implies or directly says we need alcohol to parent our kids,
Mm,
or our kids are the reason we drink. And I think there's some confusion around, what is and what isn't mommy wine culture, because I don't necessarily believe mommy wine culture is about a mom having a glass of wine. And I don't think that is as dangerous a messaging as it is a mother on social media or a Saturday Night Live skit that's implying that wine or alcohol is the only way mothers can survive parenting.
yeah.
And I think that those are two very different things. So I want to kind of get that across, because I think some people get stuck on, look, it's a mother drinking wine. That's mommy wine culture. Not necessarily.
Mm,
It's a mother drinking to cope with parenting and using her kids as the excuse to do so. So I want to say that first. When I was on this early motherhood journey, I was a perpetrator of mommy wine culture. I I did the memes. I
mm,
shared the memes. I made the memes, saying,
yeah.
mommy needs wine, and all the things. I thought it was funny. I thought it was justification to drink, all the things. And it's only now on the other side of it where I can look back and see how harmful that message is for anyone who is in that gray space of drinking, maybe kind of having those thoughts in their head saying, is this too much? I
Mm,
don't feel good. I don't feel like I'm the best parent I can be. Um, and then, the other part where, as I'm a daughter of an alcoholic, to know the implications of a parent drinking to cope and what kind of results that leaves on the whole family, let alone the children. I can see it from a very different side now than I was when I was heavily ingrained in the culture.
Mm.
So, when I look at mommy wine culture now and I see, some of the things, because it's a very popular conversation to have, people think it's very funny to laugh at all the wine you need to drink to survive parenting, or that your kids are the reason you drink. And the way I try to look at it now is coming from where I'm coming from, which is 5 years sober, daughter of an alcoholic, somebody who did used to drink to cope, is where can that kind of thinking take you? You
Mm.
know, it's, hiding the alcohol in your Yeti cup to get through parenting. Is that a funny Instagram reel? Or is that harmful messaging that in order to survive the harder parts of parenting, we need to drink ethanol? Um,
Yeah.
Ultimately, when you think about alcohol, it is the greatest form of self-sabotage we can give ourselves as mothers.
Mm.
Yet we're encouraging it amongst each other.
Yeah.
That's kind of the messaging I really want to get us past. And that's something I talk about a lot in the book. Like, what can we be offering mothers who are struggling with whatever it is, the challenges of parenting, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, regular anxiety, the struggles of working in a corporate structure that's not set up for mothers.
Mm.
Um, when we laugh it off or suggest people drink wine to cope with it, it feels like we're end capping someone's genuine struggles and needs. And what we could really be doing is offering people support, advocating for legislation changes, or advocating at the workplace for structural changes,
Mm.
to be more positively um, helpful and uplifting to mothers who are in the trenches. These are all things that could actually change our motherhood journey for the better.
Yeah.
And yet we're not doing that. We're not supporting other mothers struggling. We are essentially laughing off their pain and struggles,
Mm.
or simplifying it down to a glass. It's nothing a glass of wine can't fix.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of positive ways we can help mothers and support them on this journey. And mommy wine culture is not it. And it will never
No.
be it.
No, no, you're right. It won't be. So what would you advise a mum to do if she's struggling right now, if she's had enough of, the jokes and the funny things that, pop up on her Instagram feed?
Yeah.
Um, how can she begin to help herself?
Yeah. I think anyone who's questioning their drinking or is wondering how much alcohol is helping them versus hurting them,
Mm-hmm.
it's worth having the conversation with themselves and getting curious and exploring alternatives. If you are someone who has a history, and not even of heavy drinking, but of even occasional drinking, you already know where that leads. And it's worth exploring a different path.
Mm.
So whether that be taking a 30-day break or trying a 30-day alcohol-free experience,
Yeah.
it's worth trying that, because at the end of the day, drinking is not going to be the fix, because you have already seen that it's not the fix.
Mm.
So it's worth exploring a different alternative. And it kind of goes against mainstream thinking that alcohol is just part of our lives. And I'm hoping this is a change in conversation we can have as a society,
Yeah.
that alcohol isn't just um, It doesn't have to just be part of everything we do. And it's worth seeing what else is out there. And if you have not tried 30 or 60 days without alcohol, that's a great place to start. It will not only detox your body,
Mm.
but it will reframe your mindset. It will reset your dopamine levels. It does so many things behind the scenes that will help you kind of give a more clear-headed idea of what you want to do and see moving forward. It's funny because when I look back, or when I read about all the negative implications of alcohol, things that nobody ever talks about when they're advising moms to drink wine, which is alcohol it causes increased anxiety. It's a depressant. It reduces our energy levels. It causes awful hangovers and headaches. And it also puts us in a precarious situation when we are in charge of raising little children.
Yeah.
These are all cons, when you are assessing whether alcohol is actually beneficial in your life. But we don't talk about it very much. And when a mom is struggling with things that she's going through, or she's struggling with anxiety or depression, it's very rare that you hear a doctor or even friends say, would you consider, or how about trying abstaining from alcohol?
Mm.
And, I think about my own motherhood journey before I was ready to even explore sobriety. And I was diagnosed with postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, and never once did it occur to me to take alcohol off the table. Not
Yeah.
only does alcohol interfere with your antidepressant medications, but it is messing with your brain and
Mm.
your dopamine levels
Yeah.
in a way that is already so dangerous when you are a new mom. So the fact that we don't question um, or even consider uh, trying a sober experiment,
Mm.
taking some time off, really speaks to the pressure and I think the pull alcohol has on our culture at this day and time, and hopefully something that we can shift away from in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just been so normalized, hasn't it? Like you said, it's often the last thing that we would even think about doing in order to sleep better or lose weight or get a bit more energy or focus. We think we try all the things first. And then, as a last resort, often sometimes it's, oh, well, maybe I could try not drinking, when really it should be the first thing that we should
Right.
try. But often it's, like you said, it just goes against everything that's out there. I remember when I was pregnant with my first son, and the midwife said that it would be a good idea to have half a pint of Guinness every day for the iron. It's like, no, not at all. It's
There's other ways
crazy.
to get iron.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like drinking red wine for the heart benefits
Right.
when there's
Right.
actually no benefit at all. Um, so yes, I think it's a very complicated situation. But also I do believe that it's a very personal choice as well. And if we as individuals can find a way for ourselves, then we can do so much more for, as you said, other mums who might be struggling. So, what was the thing or things that really helped you and maybe continue to help you stay in your lane and true to yourself and on your path and
Mhm.
living alcohol free in a way that feels good, even when times are difficult?
Yeah, I think in once I realized that there is kind of a whole community and sober world available and accessible to me online, it became a significant part of my sober journey, which was uh, normalizing it,
Mm.
just through my own social media feeds, through the books I was reading. So it didn't feel so isolating when pop onto your Instagram and 50% of the people you're following are sober accounts. It feels much more like you're part of a community and you're part of a bigger um, space.
Yeah.
So things like that could have a really positive influence. Having our own community, to feel like we can share safely and have these very vulnerable conversations is also another important step, where whether people find it through AA or a non-AA recovery group, um, they are widely available now, and
Yeah.
accessible to people virtually. So that's something I always encourage people, because it wasn't always this way.
No.
Pre-pandemic, to find a recovery space that was available online was, I wasn't aware of any.
Mm.
Um, but now, I can hop onto a recovery meeting 3 or 4 times a day if I wanted to. And I
Yeah.
think in early sobriety, that is something worth considering. Um, and I think, now that I'm in longer term recovery, um, my need for connection and I'm a sober connection kind of ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm.
But in the earlier days, it really did feel like it's all you think about. It's all you're
Yeah.
connecting with. They talk about have uh, attending meetings every day, whatnot, and I think it can feel really overwhelming for somebody in the early spaces of
Mm.
their own recovery. But what I try to remind people is, it's not always going to feel this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
My friend Emily Paulson, who's the founder of Sober Mom Squad, always says it's like when you first learn how to drive a car. You're in the car, you're anxious, you're thinking about all the rules, you're obsessing. And now, when she or anyone gets in a car after years of experience, sometimes you don't even remember the car ride, because
Mm.
it comes so it's just almost like background noise. I mean, it all just fits in the bigger picture of our lives, and it doesn't feel so intense.
Yeah.
So I try to remind people in early sobriety that it can feel all consuming right now. And it is, kind of, because it's something you've got to work through
Mm.
with some immediacy. But
Yeah.
once you get some sober footing, it won't always feel so intense. It won't always feel so dire.
Yeah.
And you can kind of relax into it, in the best way.
Mm. Yeah, I know what you mean. The wine o'clock ritual of, well, I used to make tea, eat something, wash the dishes, take the dog for a walk. And that
Yeah.
was, I had to remind myself that's what I did now, instead of, cracking open a beer. When I had a craving, it's consciously thinking, oh, well, what can I do about it? Or if I was antsy or having big feelings, it was remembering that there was another way, and to choose the other way first, and then choose again and keep choosing
Yeah.
until you got a handle on it. But you're right, it's not like that forever. I'm 5 years alcohol free as well, and I don't think about having to remember to wash the dishes after dinner instead of having a beer. It's just
Yeah.
what I do now. And I don't really think about alcohol anymore. I said to one of my clients the other day that for me, alcohol is a bit like football. I know it exists in the world, but it doesn't enter my sphere, if you like. Um,
Absolutely.
so it is important, I think, that people do realize that what they're going through in the early days, it's not like that
Yeah.
forever.
I mean, you won't always feel like you're laying on a bed of nails. And thank
Exactly.
goodness.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so what is one of the best things about being sober, Celeste, from a personal and parenting point of view, do you think?
Uh, Being intentional is
Mm,
my greatest joy that comes from my sobriety, which is something that I could not say when I was actively drinking. And I mostly mean it around being a parent. I think one of the main reasons I quit drinking ultimately was because I knew I couldn't be intentional with my time around my
mm,
children. And I knew I would regret that for the rest of my life. And
yeah.
now I am intentional with my time with my children. I can be present with them, and meet their needs, but not just meet them, recognize their needs, which was something
Mm,
I couldn't even 100% do when I was under the influence of just one or two glasses of wine.
yeah.
To be able to, um, I'm a deeply feeling person, yeah, a
Mm,
highly sensitive person, and I think for a lot of reasons that's what drew me to alcohol. But now with that, I recognize and see when my children need me,
yeah.
when my children are struggling, and these are all things that I can see, and I can take time to work through with them
Mm,
in a way that I could never do under the influence of alcohol. So that's probably my favorite positive experience that comes from long-term or short-term sobriety.
mm,
Um, and I could only get here by being alcohol free. It's not even something I would have been able to find through moderate drinking. I have to be alcohol free to be the kind of mom I want to be for my children.
yeah. Yeah.
And that's my
Absolutely.
greatest gift and reward in sobriety. And that
Mm,
is something that in 20, 30, 40 years, I will be so thankful for.
yeah.
Um, and I can look back on and say, it's perhaps the greatest gift I could have given my children. And again, this is speaking as someone who grew up with a parent in addiction. So I know I know the direction that goes. That's not the direction I want to go with my own children.
Yeah. Yeah. And the greatest gift that you can give yourself as well, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like alcohol was doing me any favors as a mother.
Mm,
It was draining me of energy. It was draining me of any opportunity to give myself true self-care.
yeah.
My alone time was dedicated to numbing out. Like how
Mm,
positive and beneficial is that in the long term?
mm,
It feels good for a couple minutes, and then you pay the consequences the next day times 10.
yeah.
So when you weigh the pros and cons of the impact alcohol is having on your life, you have to keep in mind so many, not just short-term consequences, but long-term consequences. And for what? For a short buzz.
Mm,
Um, that gave me so much clarity. And that's only clarity you can find when you've had a couple days or weeks of sobriety under your belt.
yeah.
Um, it's really hard to kind of see the forest from the trees when you're still drinking
Mm,
regularly. So I
yeah.
feel like even if you are not sure what your long-term relationship with alcohol is going to be, um, even just offering yourself that opportunity to take a break is such a gift for you to see the forest from the trees, and something you need to do for yourself to give yourself that full opportunity to understand what the benefits are from drinking and what the consequences are.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I would say go into it maybe with an openness, with a willingness just to try and experiment and see how it affects you. Try not to listen to, your friends or what other people around you are thinking or doing or saying, because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's very personal. journey, isn't it? Even though we might have, great support and a community, we're the ones who are doing it at
Mhm.
the end of the day. Um, and you're so right. We can't really know what it's going to be like until we give it a go. My
Yeah.
own experience, I was really terrified of not drinking, so much so that I kept putting it off because I was imagining, oh, but what do people do at the weekend if they don't drink? Or how will I manage Friday night or homework? And it wasn't until I had a full day without drinking, I was like, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be like. Um, so it's definitely worth just giving it a go. I would agree with that.
Yeah. It's worth it. It's worth
Mm,
giving it a go. I don't,
it is.
you'll never regret a day you don't drink. And
Yeah.
I say that um, for anyone who's wanting to quit drinking long term or who wants to even just take the day off from drinking. Like you'll never regret it.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Before we go, just if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about your book, when it's due out, how we can get it, and where else we can find you and read your amazing writing.
Thank you. Yeah, my book is called It's Not About the Wine, The Loaded Truth Behind Mommy Wine Culture. And it comes out September 12th of this year. And it's available anywhere books are sold for pre-order right now.
Okay.
And it's a lot about, some of the things we talked about today, mommy wine culture, why it's dangerous. I weave in a lot about my own story
Mm,
and then a whole lot about the early parts of sobriety and making friends and finding
mm,
community and how to work with a husband who was still drinking, all these things that you maybe don't think about until you're there.
yeah.
Um, and so that is a bit about it, but also I spend a lot of time talking about the mental load of motherhood,
Mm,
the emotional labor that goes into parenting that often falls on the the mother in the family, and how sometimes it can feel like the cards are stacked against us, and how to turn that around,
mhm.
how to find how to lift the load, how to find peace in motherhood, how to find joy in motherhood, um, and how to do it without resorting to wine every night.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, in the meantime, yeah, you can pre-order my book now, but you can also find me. I write every week on Substack um, under the Ultimate Mom Challenge.
Yeah.
And those writings are new every week, and it's free to subscribe. And I'm also on social media, Facebook and Instagram under the Ultimate Mom Challenge as well.
Okay. Perfect. We'll put all of those links in the show notes. I just
Great.
read your Substack today. It was so
Oh,
beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Um, and yeah, I would recommend it to anybody who doesn't know who you are to sign up for the weekly writings.
thank
Thank
you. Yeah.
you, Celeste. It's been such a joy to talk to you today. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for reaching out and taking this time to talk about, what I believe is such an important topic and something that
Mm,
we do need to see societal change around, because it mommy wine culture certainly sucked me in, and it's still sucking so many mothers who are vulnerable and feeling lost. And
yeah.
I want to turn that around. I hope we can get there.
Yeah, we can for sure. For sure. Thank you.